Hi, welcome to the Chico Bag Podcast, where we come to get inspired to leave the planet better than we found it. And today we're joined by Marialyce Pedersen, and we're going to talk about how to build back better. In other words, resiliency in our built environment. Marialyce, welcome.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks. It's great to see you and have me on your podcast. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
As you know, as I told you when I met you recently at the Plastic Pollution Coalition Summit in Santa Monica, I remembered you from the 1990s when you used to show up at Eco Expo events in Los Angeles, back when we could count all the environmentalists in Los Angeles on two hands, or perhaps. So it was an exciting pioneering time, and I was working at a little consulting company, Harmonious Technologies, and with the man John Rulak, and we ended up writing a book on backyard composting and promoting home composting to everyone we could. And this book was really successful, sold 500,000 copies, and loved teaching everyone how to recycle their organics. And it's exciting now to be in California, now that we have legislation 1383 that requires people to compost. So it's been a long, that's one thing I've learned in this field, is be patient. The things that you want to happen, they might not happen this week or this month, but if you hang in there and I always love how our colleagues are so collaborative. We know in the environmental world that you can't do any of this alone, that you absolutely need everybody you can to be working, in this direction, because we're trying to solve some big challenges like protecting our climate. So yeah, I got into the recycling field through this job with Harmonious Technologies, and then ended up working in local government. I had a cool career, worked for City of Ventura and the City of Thousand Oaks, and then the County of Santa Barbara, and then the County of Ventura. And in 1993, Disney hired me to be their, 2003. Disney hired me to be their environmental, waste minimization rep was my title. And so I got to have a really cool career for 16 years doing environmental policy there. And while I was there, I was a longtime member of the California Resource Recovery Association, CRRA, which has been an amazing resource with the most excellent people, my colleagues. I've learned so much by attending these conferences. And they were one of the early places where I started hearing about green building and construction. Well, I think it started with construction, demolition, recycling. We wanted to try to recycle what was remaining when people, tore down buildings. And then I'd meet people that were into deconstruction, who were carefully taking down buildings so they could reuse the lumber, which I loved and got into that. And while I was with Ventura County, I attended a permaculture workshop. Your audience, permaculture, permanent agriculture, a system developed by an Australian, Bill Mollison, which is it's all, I guess I just say in short, just how to integrate environmental principles into your life, into your home, your farm.
So that's the idea of like planting fruit trees in your yard, or having, instead of ornamental plants, plants that are producing food.
Yes, that's one part of it. And using nature, not what, you're stacking functions and trying to let nature do. One of the things is slow it, spread it, sink it around water, that you want to not just rush it down in a culvert down to the ocean. You'd want to capture the rainwater if you can, all kinds of good stuff. And so I was at the permaculture event was held at a place called the Ojai Foundation, and they were a nonprofit foundation doing like environmental and social, emotional intelligence type work. And they were frustrated that Ventura County, they felt, had been an obstacle. The county itself was preventing them from doing what they wanted to do in their mission, that they needed to build a road for, it was actually a fire road. And I was at the end of the workshop, I thought, gosh, I work for the county. I like feeling like local government is there to help people, and that we can, partner together with our residents and organizations and companies in the county, and do good things together. And so I said, hey, what can I do? What can I do to help mend this relationship? And they said, well, we need to build a new reception building. And we want to do it with some alternative building techniques, but we're challenged. The county seems to not be receptive to that. And I said, okay, got it. And then the California Integrated Waste Management Board, now Cal Recycle, they were offering grants on green buildings. So I got $50,000, which was just enough. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it was enough to help the architects overcome the extra work that was needed to convince the building and safety that we could do this green building. And so they chose a straw bale building. And it was made with traditional framing, but the bales of straw were the walls instead of using lumber. So we were both preventing, deforestation and lumber use, but also using straw. Straw is a byproduct of the rice growing industry in the Central Valley. And they had just banned burning that straw because of the air pollution issues. So the state was looking for ways to utilize straw. So we said, okay, we'll use it to build this building. Anyway, this building got built in 2003, and then I got hired by Disney, and kind of that was in the past. And then in 2017, the Thomas Fire came through Ojai and Ventura and wiped out a lot of buildings, including everything on this Ojai Foundation property except our straw bale building. And so we
Oh,
had said that it would be fire resilient, but we did not expect to have to approve it. And while obviously straw is flammable, if you could burn, a bale of straw, but because you coat it with plaster and earthen plaster on the outside, that hardens it enough. And so we saw the fire had come right to the edge and it had stopped there. And so it's kind of an amazing miracle. And then in 2025, my house burned down here in Altadena. And
so
again,
that
I
was
went
the
to a
big LA fires that was on the news recently.
correct. Yeah, that this is a national or international audience. The Eaton Fire came through the town of Altadena, and it was probably most likely started by our utility SCE. They had some old towers up and it arced in a windstorm. And then unfortunately, we discovered that our Los Angeles County Fire Department was very ill prepared to fight this fire, and they pretty much abandoned all of West Altadena and let it burn. So that's another issue I'll talk about. I'd like to talk about having more citizen response and more training, and also just building more fire resiliently rather than with kindling and toxic waste. So all
So
right, so now here I
so
am.
you lost your house. You lost your house as well in the fire.
The whole darn thing, yeah, it was almost I was about to celebrate its 100th birthday. It was built in 1928, and it was made of strong masonry, but the windows, I think the fire probably got in because either my vents, I had intended to put the more fire safe vents on, but I hadn't gotten around to it. So I have some regrets. I had intended to get a pump because I have a swimming pool, and I didn't do that. I trusted the firemen were going to come, and they didn't come. So always be prepared, especially if you're in unincorporated counties where you maybe don't have the most diligent fire service. So yes, here I am without my house. I'm talking to you now from my tiny house. This is a cute little 243 square foot home built on the back of a trailer that I put on my lot after they cleared the debris. And so I'm living here, and I am preparing to build my new house, which will be made of straw bale because, again, permaculture. This spring, shortly after the fire, I attended an awards ceremony up in Santa Barbara with Wes Rowe and Margie Bushman. And they are leaders. They've been leaders. They're in their 70s now. They've been amazing leaders in permaculture for decades. And they were one of the people that I knew about green building from way back when not many people did. So I can't speak more highly of all the work they do. But they had hosted this awards for some folks that do green building in New Mexico, Bill and Athena Steen. So I attended this workshop, and who was in the audience? My architect that had done the project at the Ojai Foundation. And he said, "Hey, Marialyce, you need a new house. You should do it with straw bale because now it's in the code. We had to fight to get ours permitted. We had to go through a lot of extra hoops to do it. But in that time, since 2003 till now, some people had worked to provide I think it's the International Building Code and the California Building Code with all the details that they would need to approve a straw bale building. I was inclined to want to build with earth. I had a cob fire pit. Cob is another green building technique that's made of sand, or we use decomposed granite and a little bit of clay and a little bit of straw. And you just combine those natural materials. You can work it with your hands. You can teach a kindergartner or seniors. Anyone can do it. So I have this cute little fire pit and seating, and that was all that was left after the fire. My house was gone, but this cob area was perfect. It was just the same as it was before. So I would have loved to build with that, like an adobe or a monolithic adobe is what you would call it, but that's not yet
Yeah.
permittable.
So
So
let me stop you there for a sec.
yeah,
So you're talking about something it sounds very appealing, right? So you're talking about these straw bale structures You've gone through 2 fires. These are the only things that have survived the fire. Anyone that's living in a fire-prone area who is living, anywhere where there's a fire would want one of these. And I'm hearing that there's also some issues with, at least in your area around the county approving this kind of construction. Now, you said that in the U.S. building code, they have it written so that, but at the county level, has it been adopted throughout the United States, or is it
Yeah,
still kind of hit
California.
and
It's in the
miss?
California building code. So yes, so the county can follow that and comply with that. I right now, I actually did just go down to the county board of supervisors 2 weeks ago with an earth architect, Ben Lesher. He's an expert in earth building, and he's doing a project in San Bernardino and working through permitting there. There's this weird impasse where the county wants the state to approve this first, and the state says, "Oh no, you should have your county approve it." So the assistant to our county supervisor, Catherine Barger, met with us and said, "Hey, I will schedule a meeting and we'll get you sitting down with the state so that we can work this out." They seem really receptive. So this is a good thing post fire, is that the county is, I believe, trying to help our residents to rebuild and to rebuild more sanely. Unfortunately, what is easily permittable and what I see my neighbors building with right now is what my friend and colleague Art Ludwig would call kindling and toxic waste. Literally,
Ah,
like, oriented
traditional frame
building
structures.
materials with toxic glues and so this is where my head's exploding every day, Andy, because there's all these people who are too freaked out to go home because it's too toxic and their land is too toxic and they're worried about all the toxins in their land, and yet they're out planning their new house, which is literally going to be more, hopefully it won't burn down again, knock on wood, it shouldn't. But if it does, it seems a little crazy to me that it's harder to build with these natural building, and we're trying to go for also not just fire safety. We're also concerned about earthquakes, but also radical affordability. If you can build a house out of the dirt on your own land, imagine how much cheaper that is than going to Home Depot and buying a bazillion pieces of lumber and everything else you need to build a house. And you can do it with your friends, and it's super fun.
So
So,
I'm sure that there's a lot of questions coming up. I'm sure that people listening
yes,
to this have a lot of questions coming up. Let me try and channel their questions to you. One would be, okay, so it sounds like it's still kind of a hassle to get these things approved, even in, I mean, at the county level. So there's still some friction there, right? So it's not the
mhm,
easiest thing to do,
no.
but it's possible.
Yeah, yes. Straw bale is possible right now. My architect should be able to draw plans for me to rebuild a straw bale structure. Right now, I would not. I was initially going to pursue earth building, and I've abandoned that because that would be. Yeah, and I want to fight this fight. I do. I really, but I literally do need to build a home in the next year or two. This tiny house is great, but it's pretty tiny. I found out at Thanksgiving and I had multiple dishes going and trying to balance stuff on the toilet, and so it's like, um,
Yeah. Well, so
yeah, I'm
let's
just
walk through some of these other questions. So, okay, so getting the permits and the county permissions, what kind of one level of hurdle that you have to get through, and then you have the building process. So, how many construction companies are able to handle the build out of a straw bale?
It's a great question. So I actually was trying to find a contractor with straw bale building experience. There's one beautiful building in Joshua Tree called the Harrison House. That's the nearest one I know of, and I tried to reach their builders and haven't wasn't successful reaching them. I've got a couple other people who are interested. I have actually, it turned out I have a friend from another part of my life that I only recently realized was a contractor, and so he met with me and said, "Oh, I did do some experimental building 20 years ago." He was already, but I mean, I'm hoping it should be something that anyone can learn. If you look at a building plan and it's still, you still have the stick frame construction, and then you
So,
stack the bale. I mean, there's things you'll need to know, and hopefully, we're hoping to do workshops and stuff. But yeah, it is a challenge that there's not a ton of people versed in. It's definitely easier to just go the normal, traditional, toxic way.
I'm not picturing like a 2x4 typical construction. I'm thinking timber frame. Is it like a timber frame?
So that's a good question also. The building in Ojai actually has a steel frame.
Steel.
The
Okay.
sense from the architect was that it's really overbuilt because the county was so worried about its integrity that they required much more than really was necessary. Like, I think they were afraid the straw was gonna rot in 3 years and fall down if it didn't have a good frame. So that one has a steel frame. I'm hearing from the straw bale building community that the plasters adhere better to wood. So it may be advantageous to use wood, and I'll just make sure there's no exterior wood exposed in my build, that everything exterior, I'll probably have a metal roof, I imagine steel roof, and we're still working through the details. But yes, obviously fire safety as well as like energy efficiency. We want it to, it'll probably be along the lines of a passive house where you're trying to utilize nature to cool and heat and all the and make sure your building envelope is secure enough so that you're not leaking whatever temperature you desire inside. So but one of the other disadvantages of straw bale is the square footage because the bales are thick. The county measures, I think most places in the building code, they measure your square footage by the exterior, not the
Yeah.
interior living space. So, and there's an incentive to build the same square footage as you had before. So I'll probably have a smaller house. If we don't, we are going to actually try to petition them to count the only the interior square footage, but that battle has yet to be fought. And if it doesn't work out, it's fine because I don't have any more stuff anymore, so I don't need as much storage as I used to.
So
Ugh.
is that an insurance issue? Like why couldn't you just increase the size of the house by 10%? And
Oh, okay, yeah. So that getting into explaining that the county is trying to encourage people to build like for like, the same square footage and the same number of bedrooms and bathrooms, and that'll expedite your permitting. They're trying to prevent people from building mansions and overbuilding and doing things that are not in character with how Altadena was before. So it's a good thing. So they'll allow you to rebuild about the same square footage plus or minus 10%. And then beyond that, if you want to build something bigger, then you go to the end of the line. And um,
but
so
I can imagine 10% would accommodate the size of the walls, right?
I'm not worried about it. It's gonna be fine. It's gonna be a beautiful little house. Yeah, it'll
Okay.
fit on my.
So I got more questions. Let me keep rolling with my questions. So yeah, you mentioned rot. So I'm picturing, you know, straw bales, and what if they like? Are they sealed? Like, how does it not get wet and rotten?
Yeah, well, while you're building, while the bales are on deck waiting to be built with, you do have to keep them dry. You do not want them getting wet in the rain. So I probably will build some kind of tent, some kind of weatherproofing. I've actually seen neighbors run into trouble. I had some folks, friends that are they've transported old houses to their lots here in Altadena, and one unfortunately got really wet in the rains recently, and they're going to have to redo the walls and ceilings. It's kind of a nightmare. So yes, you do have to be conscious of weather, and we do sometimes get rain in LA. So I'll protect the bales before we build with them, and then once you do build with them, you put this plaster over it, and the plaster will the pla and it the plaster will seal the bale so they don't ever get wet. They're not exposed. None of them are, facing any weather at any point in their life. And the reason why straw bale doesn't burn or is more fire resilient than wood is because there's no airspace. When you build with regular stick frame, if the fire gets into the wall cavity, it's going to be able to, it finds the oxygen it needs. And so if you remove the oxygen, then fire can't burn. And so you just seal it you make a plaster, which is similar to Adobe. So it's as closest to Adobe as I could get. And it's an earthen plaster. I think it'll have lime in it. I mean, we'll still decide the mix, but clay and sand and lime, and that'll seal the bales and ensure that they don't rot, hopefully ever.
And then how do insurance companies react to this type of structure?
Yeah, that's a good question. I should finish the other part about a straw bale is you always want to have they talk about having a good boots and hat. So you make sure your straw bale building has a roof that overhangs a bit so that's protecting the bales in the rain, and then also the foundation or the footings are going to be a waterproof material. Either it could be at the OI Foundation project we used fly ash. It was fly ash left over from concrete production, I guess, and we mixed some of that in to reduce concrete is very carbon intensive, as your listeners may know, that while it's sort of a good choice for fire, it's not perfect. There's definitely things here that were concrete and did not survive, but just the carbon intensity of it, and so that's why, it's desirous to, minimize that. Or sometimes people will build with rocks. Rocks can be a foundation for a building, and there is a stone house here in Altadena that did survive the fire. So regarding insurance, I have literally not crossed that bridge with my insurance right now. I'm already my insurance. I had Pacific Specially, gonna give a shout out to them because they treated me really well after the fire, paid out my whole policy, didn't make me produce inventory. They've been amazing. So I do expect that they may drop me and everybody else here once I think they have a certain time frame that they can't drop you after an incident, after a claim. But after that, I think all bets are off. And so that's actually a wild card right now for not just me, but everyone in Altadena. How are we going to be able to get fire insurance? And right now, the California Fair Plan is the plan you get when you can't get regular private insurance. It's a state program, and it's more expensive and not as good a coverage. So we're hoping, but it's something that I really would like the insurance industry to partner with us on, because certainly it's in their interest for people to build homes that don't burn and also are earthquake resilient. And so to me, I they should be our best friends in working on this. If we can help solve that with my construction style, they should be all in, right?
I would imagine the California Fair Plan, since it is run by the government, that would be a good place to start. Like they should be able to give a significant discount for straw bale because it is resilient to future risk.
I vote yes.
Okay.
So yeah, it's something and I think I probably need to. The passive house people too, I think, have some insurance industry reps in their realm, and so this would be a great conversation for us to pursue in the very near future. Because yes, it's of interest to everyone here who's in a fire prone area.
Yeah, well, a lot of us in California, I know in other parts, of the world are all experiencing these kinds of intense forest fires that we haven't seen in the past. I live in Chico, which we had the Paradise Fire. I think they called
Yeah.
it the Camp Fire in 2018, where the
Yep.
whole town of Paradise, almost the whole town was lost.
Yep.
And I've been watching them rebuild, and yes, they're rebuilding with the same building style as what was there, which seems to me to be crazy because it
Agreed.
seems like this is a great opportunity to build back better, to build resiliency so that we don't have these issues in the future. And there's no evidence yet to show us that these risks are going to be reduced; they're only going to be increased. So, how do we take
Yeah.
these what we call now as alternative building techniques? How do we make them the default? How do we make them the status quo?
Sane and not insane, yeah. I mean, I see a neighbor with built a wooden fence, and I'm like, "What did we not learn? Why why would you do that? Why would what?" I don't know. It's hard. And it's frustrating for me because I felt like I have gotten 2 decades in on this, and we have made some progress. Again, the straw bale building is in the code, so that is a great thing that happened. However, I do feel like I'm still slogging uphill, and, we do have the answers, and and sometimes you wonder about, like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it does sometimes feel like the building industry has kind of got its kind of throttled us to make it compel us to do the normal traditional way that puts money in their pockets and is the way they know how to build, and that they're not as open to building. It's interesting. Los Angeles County used to actually supposedly have a materials evaluation lab where they were actually testing new building products and approving them for and and then that got shut down at some point, and it kinda seemed like that's what happened. That I imagine there was a time when LA was being built in when there was the heyday, the '60s and '70s, lots of people were moving here, and they probably were, things like concrete blocks. They talk about how, um, with the skills saw that made it really easy for people to build faster and quicker with lumber, and so that speeded up, these quick slapdash, spec I don't know what you call them, when they just build a suburb and
Yeah,
you know
track homes.
tract homes, yeah, and they build it as cheaply as they can and sell it for as much as they can. The old profit motive is not always our friend in this situation, but, what was I saying? Why is it so hard? Yeah. So I don't wanna feel like there is any any concerted organized effort to squash all this. And I was really happy. I went to the US Green Building Council's Green Build Expo about a month ago. It was held here in LA. And I went in kind of expecting to be a little cynical and like, none of this is green enough. You guys are like, because they will allow you to build stuff with traditional, they have a whole rating system I don't want to get into now, but to my surprise, they had a whole village of people that are making hemp building materials to displace the concrete. And so they have these beautiful hemp blocks that are already being mass produced. They're growing huge fields of non drug hemp in Kentucky and Montana. They're all over it. And they've already built a house in Eureka that's fully standing and been approved by their building department. So I was amazed. So there is momentum right now, and I do feel like I'm ready to turn the corner. I'm ready to stop for it to be experimental and just the weirdo hippies out in the hills. Like, it should really be traditional. And if I can help in my rebuild to kind of demonstrate that it's possible and teach my neighbors it's possible, man, I would love to encourage all my neighbors to attend a basic building class at the community college or get the high school kids to be pursuing building arts. I don't like that we feel like we have to pay all our money to some contractor that we could all learn to. It used to be that everyone knew how to do a barn raising with their neighbors and friends, and it could. I think it'd be neat if it was like that way again, or that we just had more control over what we rebuild with ourselves, more hands-on, more, even if you don't have the time to do it, that you it shouldn't be impossible.
Yeah, well, the way I look at it is, we have some momentum. There's a bit of a flywheel effect with anything that's happening. The status quo wants to stay in place because that's what people know, right? And to change into something that's better, there's got to be a lot of compelling reasons, and the playing field that we play on has to be tilted. And right now, it's tilted to kind of bad behavior is what I call it. It's just like it's incentivizing, the stick built houses because that's what they sell at Home Depot. You can't go buy straw bales at Home Depot. You could buy, 2x4s. You could buy, plywood sheathing. You could buy all the things you need to build a house at Home Depot. You can't go there and buy hay bales, to go build a
Well,
house.
yeah, I'll get the hay bales from more like a agricult wait, somebody who supplies them for horses and stuff like that. So yeah, I'll figure out where to get the straw bales soon. But and I will need some stuff from, I was just there today at Home Depot.
Yeah.
Lots
But I
yes,
guess I guess my point is it's just like the whole system is kind of tilted towards not doing straw bales, and you have to really fight the system to do it. And at some point, when enough of us do it, it will become mainstream. And we know that we've arrived when they start selling, cob or hay bale construction materials at Home Depot. That's when we know that it has become mainstream.
yep. They do sell sand. Home Depot sells sand, which you can use definitely.
Yes.
That's one element you could get there. And then I bought all the decomposed granite for my project from a local a place called Stone Yard that sells like stuff for home improvements type stuff, and they've been great. So yeah, we'll work that part, the supply part out. And actually, that I do hope that I'll have better. Everybody's worried. Well, certainly worried about tariffs and all that, and whether they'll be able to get even the traditional building materials in here. So the more local, like my cob fire pit is built. We used clay dug right from the mountains here in Altadena, which I think is super cool. It's very local and very radically affordable. It was free, and so it's exciting. Yeah. What was I going to
Yeah,
say?
I mean, I think about my own yard. Anytime I try to plant anything, like literally 10 inches down, I got clay. Like I cannot even dig through it. It
Oh,
is it is the best clay, but it's terrible for planting gardens. But I imagine it'd be really good for building a house. And I'm thinking like, you know, I people always get stuck, I think, and it's like, oh, well, I can never do that, because X, Y, and Z. But every one of us, needs probably a woodshed or something in our yard. And wouldn't it be fun just to make it a fun project to build something small and try it out? Because the risk is low. If you mess up your woodshed, it's not the end of the world. And you could
that is a
practice and
great. I'm glad you brought that up because you actually can build anything under 120 square feet without a permit. And so that's how most of these experimental earth building and straw bale buildings have been done. Just little cute little like tool sheds, and they're not supposed to have electricity or water.
Yeah,
But people joke. I have a friend who lost his house in the fire. My neighbor who helped me build my cob, he's already built himself an adorable little 120 square foot building with a steel frame, and then they're doing experiments with like what's called light clay straw and utilizing. They had a rundo, which is a unwanted non-native plant, and they use that to create wall and kind of clay and straw over that. Really cool, and I'm so proud of him to do that. And so, it's supposed to be a tool shed that we joke, but yeah, the tool shed
yeah.
just the tools need a bed, so there's a bed in there for the tools.
So,
But yeah, people can
I
build
like
120.
that. I think that's a great way for people. It's an approachable thing that people can do. Everyone
I agree.
wants a she shed or a man cave
Yes.
in their backyard to get some solace, to go out there and, work out things. And why not make it out of natural materials? And, that's
Amen, and this is
also a
something
great
kids
way to
could
kind
get
of
into.
work through, you know, all of us need like an outlet to just kind of get our hands dirty and to de-stress at the end of the day. And I can imagine, just playing with clay would be a great way to make the world a better place.
You're coming to my workshops, Andy. I'm gonna invite you,
Yeah,
yeah.
I will
But
sign up.
regarding the youth are frustrated. There's a whole bunch of kids that don't want to go into corporate life and don't want to go sell more stuff and want something a little alternative and want to, and they do need shelter and maybe they don't want to live in their parents' house forever. And so this is a really cool, I think people think that kids aren't, but they are. We've got this whole group of people in this permaculture world and they're so cool and so into it and so, inspiring each other. And it's so, it's like it's the cure for depression and loneliness and isolation. It's like it's a beautiful thing when people get together to do a cob or some natural building together. It's very cool.
That sounds great. I think it's something that can make the world a better place, and I so appreciate you building back better. And I'm so sorry for your community's loss, and I hope more people become inspired by the work you're doing and build something that is resilient. And you're building a resilient community, and I think it's great work. So thank you so much.
In a weird way, I've been saying I think I've been training for this over the last 20 years in a weird way. Like, and I'd say I did have premonitions. I'm sure everybody worries about, I hope my house never burns down, and I did too. And I would think about it. Um, and it is weird to be here in this position and to have the knowledge that I have and to know I'm frustrated because I'm so overwhelmed trying to just, be a survivor and deal with my own life that I haven't been able to do as many community building stuff. And already, of course, people are already out the door with their traditional. And so it'll be, I guess, the second wave of folks that maybe might want to come to my workshop and learn that they can do it. We're really concerned about our Black neighbors who had generational home ownership and no insurance. They didn't hit, a house that the grandparents bought because it was one of the few places Blacks could own houses during the redlining era. And so those are my neighbors that I have the most empathy wanting to and urge to want to support, that if I could teach them you don't need to spend a $500,000 to a contractor. You could help learn to do this yourself, and you and your family and friends and everyone.
Well, that sounds like a great opportunity. I look forward to learning more. How can people learn more or get in touch with you or the movement that's happening in Altadena?
Yeah, if I was really on the ball, I'd totally have my website now, wouldn't I? um I mean, I'm happy if people want to email me at marialycep@gmail.com or on Facebook, Marialyce Pedersen. If people want to, and then there already are a few, there are some organizations. There's one called Build Outside the Box. And then Ben Lesher, the earth building, expert architect, his organization is called Adobe is Not Software. So that's a good thing to remember. And the other person to track around this is Art Ludwig, Ludwig. Was into gray water systems in the early days and created a soap product, Oasis, that was
Uh-huh.
safe to use to clean your laundry and wouldn't kill your plants. And then he got really into code and understanding the building code and wondering why things that were environmentally better were not permittable. And so he's been fighting this for a long time. And he has some YouTube videos that are really amazing where he shows what he's promoting as this monolithic adobe, which is like a cob material. And they do fire testing on it. They run out lot of fuel in the fire cannons that they shoot the fire at these walls with before they even get it to not just burn, but not even get warm on the other side. And
Wow.
so, and whereas the other building materials they test, he had firefighters there on site and he asked them, what's this like compared to the others? They said, this is the first time we've ever actually attended one of these tests because usually we're way out of town because that stuff is so toxic. We don't want to be anywhere near it when they burn normal building materials. So that just says a ton to me about what's going on in the world. Like, wow. And, we're worried about all the firefighters that are, and our residents too, that are going to get sick from what they inhaled that night and the next few days after it. And
Yeah.
oh, I also want to recommend the other really great resource that was there at that event that we saw each other at, the Plastic Pollution Coalition, is this organization Habitable Informed. They've got a book that's they rate building materials on a green, yellow, red scale, and are
Yes.
advocating minimizing the use of plastic because plastics do fuel wildfires, not only in production and the environmental impacts of that, but when houses catch on fire and so forth. So this is a really cool little, well, they've got a whole website. Yeah. So if you can remember Habitable and informed.habitablefuture.org. Love this stuff. And so, yeah, there's lots of people besides, definitely there's other people than me that have been on this path and have more robust resources available. So, maybe one of the things I can do when I follow up with you is write down a bunch of websites that we could append to this podcast. That'd be great.
Yeah, I'll put them in the show notes. And, we've talked all about resiliency, but, we didn't really even talk about indoor air quality as far as the VOCs and the pollution that, comes off of traditional products that impacts our health. We didn't talk about the energy efficiency that is gained. What kind of electric bill or heating bill do you have in a Cobb house? It's significantly less as a result.
Yep.
Um,
That's the green building principle, is that when you look at the overall cost of a building ownership, only 20% is your upfront building costs. 80% of your cost is the long-term operation of that building. So the more conscious you are in the building phase of how to reduce that long-term operational cost, the better off financially you're going to be overall in the long run. So yeah, it'll be a passive house. It'll be, I used to just do things like open my windows at night when it cooled down here in
yeah,
Los Angeles, and I'd wake up as early as possible in the morning to close it and close that cool air in. And I could keep my house cool till 2 or 3 in the afternoon before I need to turn on the AC. So it's easy little things like that. But then a passive house has even more of that design built in and
we
some
we
good.
kind of with all the technology and we've kind of forgotten how to work with nature. To achieve. I always think about when you're surfing or, you're out in nature, you never want to fight nature. You always want to work with nature because that takes less energy, less effort, makes life more enjoyable. And the same is true for our built environment. When you orient your house so that you're not putting your windows, with the sun blazing on them all day, you have a much more comfortable place to live. And and we actually with Chico Bag, the factory where we make Chico bags is oriented to the sun. Whereas most people, when they build a factory, they don't even think about where the sun is. They just put it up, and and that's why they're called, a lot of times sweatshops because the sun's beating on them. They're not oriented correctly. But when you orient it to the sun correctly, you can daylight it where you don't have to have so much fluorescent light. It could be naturally lit, naturally cooled, and also naturally heated. And
Yep.
that's all, smart because it takes less energy and it costs less. It could save you a lot of money.
To that point, I would point to the WELL building standard, WELL. That's part of the U.S. Green Building Council suite of certification programs, and that's around around the health of the occupants of a building. And they've got lots of great. Well, it's a certification system. Then you would follow certain points and meet those. And I didn't mention that I'm part of the True Zero Waste program. That's how businesses that want to claim zero waste can obtain a formal third party certification for that effort. So we helped create that program some years ago. So the U.S. Green Building Council has done good. What they've done is over the last few decades, normal building standards have risen to meet that, so that things that they were pushing a while ago are now more standard. And so, yeah, in the long run, like I said, patience, is a virtue. And eventually, yes, I do think that we make progress, although it seems slower than I would like.
Well, that gives me hope to know that, the things that were being pushed, are now, encoded and implemented. And I know the more of us that get involved, the more of us that, talk with our local county building departments, the more of us that start looking at these, the faster we will go,
Yeah.
and change, as we know during COVID, change can happen very quickly if we all get on
True,
board and we all
true.
start doing it. So thank you so much for
You're welcome.
everything that you're doing and education that you just shared with us. Hopefully, people are inspired to build greener, build healthier, and build more resilient houses. Thank you.
Well, thank you for all you've been doing all these years, Andy. I told you I came up to you at this event, like raving about my Chico bags because they've lasted forever. I have some that I've had for 20 years and they never rip. And I'll have store clerk, not wanting to fill it too. I'm like, go ahead. No, no, add more. No, go ahead, add more. It's okay. It's not, and lots of the other reusable bags are crap. They're crap. They rip. And your Tico bags are amazing. And so, yeah, I know it's dissing plastic, but sometimes plastic's it's a paradoxical, but sometimes it's the perfect material for certain things if they're designed right. And you're using the recycled content, I know. And so, yes, I really admire you and all you sticking with it all this long time since we were young. Oh my gosh.
Yes. Yeah, it's 20 years this year. And yeah, you made my day hearing that, because that's the intention, is to make a long lasting product that's useful and solves a problem of people forgetting their bags at home. And so, yeah, thank you for that. Appreciate
I'm gonna
hearing
get
that.
some. I was just thinking I need to order a bunch for Christmas because that's what I want to give to people. I only
Awesome.
want
Yeah. Well,
useful gifts that are green and good, and so, yeah. You have some backpacks now, a backpack.
yes, the new travel pack, which is
Yes,
one of
yeah.
my favorites. Great for
Yeah.
going out and about, getting out in nature, as well as going out and adventuring. So yeah, I hope you enjoy it. Yeah, we're having a
Thank
sale right now, so you
Oh, okay.
know,
Alright, good, good,
yeah,
good.
come
Yeah.
on by chicobag.com. All right. Well,
Thanks.
thank you so much,
You're welcome.
and all
Thank
right, take
you.
care. Mhm.
Okay, bye.